Preface. MyNovaBooks presents The Boy, the Badge, and the Rope by Clayton Reeves. In the rough-and-tumble frontier town of Dry Creek, a single accusation ignites a storm of suspicion and fear. But one steadfast sheriff may be the only hope for a boy on the brink of condemnation. Can truth and justice prevail when panic sweeps through a tight-knit community? To explore more, please visit mynovabooks.com.
The following voice will narrate your audiobook experience.
Hi, I'm Jesse. I will be the narrator for this story.
Now sit back and enjoy. Now reading The Boy, the Badge, and the Rope.
The town of Dry Creek woke slow and uneasy that dawn. False front stores, once painted cheerful peach and mint, stood in chipped lines along the main street. Long shadows stretched from empty hitching posts across sun-bleached dirt. Only a groaning windmill on the far edge broke the hush, its weathered blades squealing like an old fiddle catching breath. A barefoot boy knelt by the fence in front of the livery. He was thin, no more than 18, dark hair mused by sleep and dust. His white shirt hung in frayed ribbons, and his knees pressed into gritty earth. Just beyond the rail, a tall, chestnut horse tossed its head, dew sparkling on its mane. A rawhide lead roped the animal to a post as though it belonged there. The boy's name was Eli Cutter, an older pupil at the little schoolhouse on the rare days it held class, an evening hand at Gus Moran's saloon, and the fastest runner on the prairie. Eli's fingers trembled on the splintered fence rail. He kept whispering to himself, "I only came for water. I only came for water." Fear churned in his gut, his mouth dry as cinders. Every sound, the squeal of the windmill, a distant dog, made his pulse spike, uncertain if he was already branded guilty. Bird boots clanged on the boardwalk. Sheriff John Quigley stepped from the morning gloom, hat brim low, badge catching a pink sliver of sun. He looked 60, but stood straight as a fence post. His duster held the smells of saddle soap and dry sage. Authority rode with the weariness etched around his mouth. He took in the yard with a lawman's sweep, a flicker of concern tucked behind a steady face. Old lessons about hasty judgment burned in his mind, but he let none of that show. "Morning, son." His voice was even and carrying, no bark, no softness, the kind that cut through a street and made folks look up. Eli swallowed. "Sheriff, I wasn't touching the horse. Just thirsty is all." His words tumbled forth with the desperate urge to be believed, shame reddening his cheeks. Quigley studied the scene. One chestnut horse, fine tack, no brand known to him. One scared kid, too scared, Quigley noted, for a simple thief. No broken rawhide lead. No pried-open stall. A thing felt crooked, yet not the boy. His gut, trained by 30 years of fair dealing, whispered the same false little word, setup. Annoyance at unseen manipulations made his hand clench the rail. He flicked his gaze down the street. Shutters cracked. Faces peeked, a boy's breathless anxiety, answered by the tense silence of a town on the edge. Rumor moved faster than tumbleweed. A few townsfolk left their porches, pulled hats low, gave curt nods loaded with old grudges. Suspicion clouded every gesture. The sheriff leaned on the fence rail. "Whose chestnut is that?" "Don't know, sir," Eli said. "It was here when I got here. I swear on Ma's Bible." Panic shimmered in his eyes. Fingers grasping the wooden rail so hard that a splinter drew blood. Before Quigley could answer, Deputy Walter Briggs stomped from the alley. Briggs, man of medium height and formidable girth, carried his mustache bristling like a wire brush, an ever-present badge of authority. His hat shadowed frost-blue eyes. His spurs rang louder than necessary. Folks claimed Briggs had come up through the town's ranks by working twice as hard and speaking louder than most, never letting anyone forget his ambition. He gave the impression of a man always 2 steps short of what he wanted. Sheriff Quigley had felt the friction ever since Briggs was passed over for promotion in favor of Quigley's steady ways. "There's our thief!" Briggs barked, pointing a square jaw at Eli, caught red-handed. His eyes flashed with zeal as he crowded out Quigley's question, eager, the sheriff noted inwardly, to seize the stage. Briggs' voice vibrated with something personal. More doors banged open. Mrs. Pritchard from the Mercantile called. "Sheriff, you best lock him up." Her words rode a wave of pent-up worry and pride. Quigley raised a palm. "Easy now. Let's hear him out." Briggs scoffed. "Hear him out? Horse theft hangs a man. Sheriff, folks won't stomach delay." He whipped out a telegraph slip, brandishing it like proof. Telegraph came in yesterday. Outlaw named Lyle Dorn rode a chestnut with a white blaze, same as this beauty. Bet the kid's in league. Eli's eyes grew saucer big. "I never even met an outlaw." Terror rattled his voice. Even denial tasted of despair. Quigley's jaw tightened, hiding his own anger at the way blame gathered before the facts. The telegraph was real enough, but the timing felt too neat, too shiny, false, like stage jewelry. Resentment pricked Quigley's chest. He hated the queasy familiarity of political maneuvering more than any gunfight. He laid a hand on Eli's shoulder. "Son, come with me. We'll sort facts from flapdoodle." He felt the world balance for an instant, Eli's hope and the crowd's doubt teetering on his words. "Sheriff," cried Briggs, "you coddle criminals. Town won't like it." He spat the words with a glare like cold iron. Anger, frustration, and old envy blending in his tone. The sheriff met the deputy's stare in silence, a void of reaction with hard edges, Quigley refusing battle on others' terms. Justice ain't a race. Then he guided Eli toward the jail, leaving murmurs buzzing behind them like angry bees, Briggs's scowl at his back. Back at the sheriff's office, the investigation took its first quiet breath. The sheriff's office smelled of lamp oil and old paper. A single desk lamp spilled yellow on dusty files. Quigley unlocked the cell, motioned Eli inside, and slid over a tin cup of water. His own movements grew sharper, a man determined under pressure, shaped by years spent resisting such storms. "I'm not charging you," he said, voice low with reassurance. "But I need you safe while I poke around." The lines of concern were etched deeper on his face, and the weight of the town's distrust pressed down. Eli gripped the bars, knuckles white. "You believe me, don't you?" Hope and desperation warred on his face. "I believe something's off. Tell me every step that brought you here." The boy recounted waking early, jogging the ridge trail, stopping at neighbor Perkins's pump for a drink, spotting the chestnut tied at the livery, hearing commotion, then kneeling by the fence when his legs cramped. Helplessness crept into his recounting, shoulders sagging with every word. Quigley took notes, the scratch of pencil steadying his thoughts. Eli kept saying, "Only. Only water, only passing by. Only," was a word that pricked like a burr. Quigley didn't doubt the boy, but he underlined the burr. The sheriff flipped to a fresh page and sketched the horse tack from memory. "A rawhide lead. New brass buckle, saddle stamped with a scorpion. He'd seen that scorpion brand once, on gear sold by the traveling trader Amos Flynn 3 months prior. Flynn favored silver, not brass. Strange, unsettling. Quigley felt the world narrowing. Every clue, a knot in his chest. He rubbed his chin. Sit tight, Eli. You hungry? A little. Quigley placed a biscuit and an apple through the bars, then locked up. He grabbed notebook, hat, and hope, stepping into brightening day. The town outside was already stirring again. By mid-morning, Dry Creek buzzed like a hornet's nest. On the boardwalk before the saloon, citizens gathered in hot knots. Lanterns from last night's meeting still swung overhead. Shouts rose. "Where's the proof?" "String him up." Sheriff Quigley climbed the rickety platform. His body felt tight, anticipation pressing on his ribs. "Neighbors," he began, voice steady. "Our law says evidence first, punishment second. Give me till sundown to gather truth." Murmurs rolled. Deputy Briggs elbowed forward, his presence imposing, voice louder than the crowd's. Sundown? Too late. Dorn could already be riding free. He threw a glare that could split wood, resentment and mounting impatience making him harder than ever. Folks around him shifted, letting his anger become theirs. A burly rancher yelled, "Sheriff, soft! Deputy ought to run things." The words left Quigley facing the hot sting of public doubt. Quigley tipped his hat, keeping anger inside, a brittle, deliberate absence behind his smile. "I swore an oath to protect every soul, guilty or no, until facts decide. That includes the boy, and it includes you." His phrasing echoed back the law, as if to make everyone, including himself, believe in its power anew. He stepped down before rage could redden further, disappearing into the swarm with cat-like grace and no sign of fear on his face, though his heart thudded like thunder. Without delay, he set out again. His first stop was the livery. Old Ben, the stable hand, pitched straw while humming. "Sheriff!" he greeted, pausing with a friendly nod. Ben's steadiness always eased Quigley's nerves, a reminder of the town's quieter side. "Mornin', Ben. That chestnut outside. When did it arrive?" Ben scratched his beard. "Never saw it till sunrise. Strange, too. Lead rope tied wrong. Quick knot, good for show, not for long hold." His tone held bemusement, but a flicker of unease, too. No one liked unknowns in the livery yard. "Anyone stable a horse late last night?" "Nope, I slept in the loft. Heard only wind." Quigley sniffed. Faint whiff of campfire on the tack. Pine smoke, not the usual mesquite. Pine, mint, canyon, country, north, 2 days' ride. He jotted the clue, curiosity and worry mixing in his mind. Next, he wandered toward the blacksmith, pausing by a fence post as though fixing a stirrup. Gossip drifted, doubtful, whispered, conspiratorial. "Deputy says sheriff's protectin' rustlers. Saw Briggs near the telegraph office after midnight." Quigley's brow twitched, anger tucked tight under that stillness. He moved on, mind racing. At the general store, Mrs. Rogers fussed over penny candy jars. "Sheriff, heard you caught the thief. Holding him till I know more," he said gently. "Say, any strangers by rope or tack lately?" His tone invited confidence, his presence a quiet pressure. "Only Deputy Briggs. Bought a new rawhide lead 2 days ago. Said his old one snapped." Quigley thanked her, heart thumping a grim beat. suspicion sharpening his focus to a fine edge. He scribbled the sale in capital letters. False lead. With clues in hand, the sheriff returned to his office. Afternoon heat baked the sheriff's office when Quigley returned. He pinned notes and sketches to a corkboard. He grouped witness claims on the left and physical clues on the right. The pattern formed a crooked arrow pointing straight to Briggs, each mark a hot coal of betrayal in Quigley's gut. Yet suspicion was not proof. Quigley needed a nail to hang the truth on. He unlocked a cabinet, retrieving correspondence logs. Under yesterday's date lay a telegraph from Silver Bend Prison. Outlaw Lyle Dorn escaped. Riding chestnut with white blaze. Last line, transmission requested by Deputy Briggs. The letters blurred as Quigley realized just how deep Briggs's ambition ran. 30 years of duty pulled at him, guilt and sorrow mixing with grim determination. Quigley exhaled slowly. Deputy had sent for that notice himself, maybe to prime the trap. Still, a motive remained murky. Quigley opened his bottom drawer and lifted a bundle of old letters he'd seized weeks earlier during a gambling den raid. Mostly love notes and IOUs. But among them, one envelope bore Briggs's handwriting, addressed to an alias, Cole Yancey. Inside, only 2 words, horse ready. The confirmation drew a cold, hollow ache, anger at his own blindness, and regret for a man he'd mentored. The final hours of daylight slipped away. Evening crawled near. Sun flirted with the ridge, painting the sky rose gold. The townsfolk, Edna and her sister May, Mr. Howell and his sons, and others, all gathered again, torches this time. Deputy Briggs stood at their head, face flushed, body squared with rigid self-righteousness, voice thick with triumph and bitterness. Sheriff Quigley refused justice all day. He bellowed, "The outlaw's horse proves collusion. Bring out the kid, or we will." Cheers erupted. Quigley felt a storm inside. Anger, fear, a sense of betrayal, but above all a heavy responsibility. Faces he'd known for decades now wavered like fever shadows. Quigley stepped onto the jail porch, his canvas vest catching torchlight. "Badge brat." "Deputy," he said, calm but loud. "I've new evidence folks aren't hearing." The quiet in his words hid the tension thrumming beneath. Briggs sneered, sweat running under his collar. "Talk all you like. We're done waiting." He motioned, and 2 men began hauling a rope. The crowd shifted. "False zeal ends in false hangings," Quigley warned, voice taut. "You gonna risk that?" Briggs signaled. 4 men advanced, the crowd closing in. Quigley saw their hesitation, a flicker of shame, fear, and doubt. The sheriff raised a folded packet, letters in Deputy Briggs's hand. One orders a rawhide lead. One requests a telegraph about Dorn. Another, he held up the shortest note. Reads, "Horse ready. Why would my deputy write such words to an outlaw's alias?" Murmurs shifted, torches dipped. The crowd's anger turned inward, guilt and confusion fraying their unity. Briggs's swagger faltered, panic gnawing at his composure. He growled, "Forged! He's lying!" But his hands shook. He looked out over the crowd, seeing not support, but accusing eyes where there had once been deference. Underneath the bluster, fear was plain as a gunshot. Quigley unclasped a thin ledger, the storekeeper's record. Storekeeper Rogers logged sale of lead rope to you, deputy. Ben at the livery says the knot was for quick release, not long tie, and I found this. He produced a stub of matching rope from Briggs's saddlebag lying by the porch rail. Its end, cut neat, matches the lead on that chestnut. Every detail locked in place, harder than iron, steady as the law. The crowd's mood flipped like a coin. Shame and anger now directed at Briggs. Eyes narrowed at the deputy, mutters of "Traitor!" and "Liar!" rippled through the knot of townsfolk. The weight of collective regret hung from every hat brim and trembling hand. "You planted the horse," the sheriff went on, each word a stone. "Sent the telegraph, stirred fear, all to paint me soft and grab my badge." He felt the bitterness echo in his own voice, resignation warring with a last sliver of hope for his former deputy. Briggs's hand flew to his holster, desperation etched on his face. "You won't take me!" He spat, voice ragged with fear and pride. Quigley drew faster, not his gun, but his voice. "Deputies!" he barked, the quick call the men knew to answer, and boots thudded as they came running. Briggs froze. Sweat coursed like melted wax. The rope men dropped their lines, suddenly abashed. "Walter Briggs," Quigley said, voice iron, "you're under arrest for fraud, inciting an attempted lynching, and conspiracy to commit murder. Hand over the piece." Disgust and heartbreak tangled in his words. Briggs's shoulders sagged, the fight gone. He set his revolver down and let the cuffs click around his wrists, avoiding everyone's eyes. Even his anger, so prominent before, now gave way to silent defeat. A hush fell, thick as wool, heavy with the town's collective guilt. Quigley turned to the crowd. "Justice won tonight because we waited for facts. Remember that next time fear knocks." He stepped inside, unlocked Eli's cell. "You're free, son." Relief flooded him, and, seeing Eli's tears, Quigley felt the sting of his own. Eli stumbled out, eyes wet. "Thank you, Sheriff." Gratitude and exhaustion trembled in his voice. "Go on home. Tell your ma you outran a storm." He caught the boy's shoulder, steady and kind. That night, as lanterns dimmed and neighbors drifted away, some ashamed, others relieved, the gravity of the day lingered in every creak of the boardwalk, every muted whisper passing between families heading for bed. Mrs. Pritchard and Mrs. Rogers lingered by the saloon stoop, talking quietly. Soon, word spread there'd be a meeting in the schoolhouse come morning to apologize to Eli and to set down, by lantern and honest talk, a set of rules for how suspicion would be handled in the future. Old Ben volunteered to call the roll. Sheriff Quigley's hand steadied the account book, while the town council drafted a pledge no one would be judged by rumor or fear again, not while Dry Creek kept its windmill and its sense of self. Later, Quigley sat alone on the jail porch, polishing his brass star with a kerchief, spreading wax in slow circles, the badge a small gleam of hard-won trust. The sky blazed amber, then violet, then deep blue. Empty boardwalks creaked. A faint ember smell rode the cooling air, a smell of endings and beginnings. Weakness sagged his frame, but relief and pride finally loosened his shoulders. Above, the windmill finally stilled for the night, stubborn as ever and quiet at last, an echo of the day's lesson. Eli appeared with 2 mugs of coffee, voice soft, grief and gratitude mingling in his hesitant step. "Ma says this is the least we can do." Quigley accepted one. Steam curled like quiet music. Much obliged. The coffee tasted of home and hard days. They sipped in silence a while. Finally, Eli asked, "How'd you know I was innocent?" "Didn't know," the sheriff said. "The truth heavy but clear. But truth don't shout. It whispers. All we gotta do is hush and listen." Folks these days forget the simple art of a pause. Weariness and hope colored his voice. A man remade for one last test. Eli nodded, learning in his eyes, resolve in his posture. "I won't forget." The windmill turned one last time, then settled. Crickets began their night song, steady and forgiving. Dry Creek, chastened, tucked itself under a blanket of stars, wiser for the lesson bought that day. False words may stir a crowd, but patient truth, slow as dawn over dusty plains, still holds the final say. And so the old lawman kept his brass star, the boy kept his freedom, and the quiet little town kept a story worth telling around hearths for years to come, now bound tighter by promises of justice and the memory of a storm weathered together.
End of The Boy, the Badge, and the Rope. Outro. Thank you for listening to The Boy, the Badge, and the Rope, written by Clayton Reeves and narrated by Jesse. We appreciate you joining us to the very end of this moving story. If you enjoyed this audiobook and would like to discover more great selections, please visit mynovabooks.com. Thank you again for your support, and we hope to have you with us for our next story.